So in this video, I'm going to be taking my wife's horse Lambo out for his first trail ride, and we're going it alone, which can cause even more trouble than when you're riding out in a group. Let's get into it. All right, so we just arrived at our destination, so it's a new environment. We're at a farm nearby our house that has some, what I like about this place is it has an arena that I can warm up in, and then I can head out to the trail. So that's what we're gonna do. So Lambo did a good job coming over here in the trailer, and now we're gonna warm up. I'm gonna test out my recovery strategies, make sure I have some communication working if he gets a little bothered out on the trail. So the plan is to get him settled in here, and then we'll take him out on the trail and we'll troubleshoot as we're going. So this is a what I would call a trail training ride. In other words, I don't have a destination that I have to get to or anything like that. It's about giving him a good experience. And another thing is I have a trail clinic that I'm doing in September. And so this is gonna be my steed for that. I ended up selling my other horse that I was planning on using for that. So Lambo's got to step up to the plate here and be my trail horse for that trail clinic, which means he needs to be a non-variable. When I'm teaching a clinic and bringing a horse with me to use, I want to make sure that my attention can be fully on the students and their horses, not on my horse giving me issues while we're going out there. So that's part of the reason we're out here with him today. So we're gonna warm him up here and see what we got. So I usually, when I go to a new place, if I was at home with him, I know him well enough that I'd probably just go ahead and warm him up under saddle. But since we're at a new place and he's looking around a little bit, I'll just do a little bit of groundwork just to make sure he's thinking about me and paying attention. And if he's passing these checks well, if he's willing, cooperative, giving me his attention, then I know we'll be ready to mount up and start checking things out there. He just blew out there, so he's wanting to relax. This is a really good minded horse, so he doesn't have a lot of experience, but he's really good minded, and so I'm not expecting too much trouble. But if we had other horses here that I was taking him out on the ride with, I would not even think twice about it. It'd be the most boring video you guys ever saw. But by bringing him here by himself, I feel like this is going to challenge him a little bit. Most horses would have more trouble riding out by themselves. You occasionally can get a horse that's really independent and isn't bothered about being by themselves, but most horses are going to have more trouble by themselves than they will with a group of horses. So normally I would take them with a group of horses to give them some experience, but I wanted to kind of show you guys. I've had a lot of requests about I need to ride my horse by myself, you know, off their property or whatever. And so I wanted to kind of show you guys how I would troubleshoot needing to ride my horse by myself. Now, I'm probably not going to go for a trail ride by myself in most scenarios, but one situation that does come up for me is if I go to a ranch and we're gathering a big pasture of cattle. Sometimes you got to be here and the next closest horse is hundreds of yards away, and so they feel very much like they're by themselves out there. And so that would be another reason that I would need to prepare him to be able to do this. But he's settling in pretty good, so I'm gonna go ahead and put my bridle on. And hey, if you guys would like to see my whole training program and be able to ask me questions about your horse, consider joining my Patreon page. I have a huge video library on there. We post a new video every Wednesday. We do monthly challenges and giveaways, and you have access to me to asking me questions about your horse. I would love to be your coach, so make sure you go check it out. I'll leave a link in the description below. So you can see he's already kind of calling out to the other horses. So one of the strategies I'm going to use is trying to be kind of on offense and kind of keeping him busy where he needs to pay attention to me. All right, so now that we're mounted up, you can see he's a bit watchy, looking around at things. So I'm going to do some yields that he's familiar with at home. So before I would get to this scenario, there's a few things that I would want to teach him at home. One of those that I think is really vitally important is what I call relaxed rein, where I just walk him on a circle and I'm going to ask him to bend his ribs around my inside leg. And what I love about this exercise is if he's really bothered, he wouldn't do that for me. And so he's probably going to come in and out of being a little bothered and distracted at times, which is typical of a young horse, but it's also typical of a horse in a new place. And so we're just going to walk around a little bit and just bend him down here and there. Make sure he's staying focused. Part of the idea or the strategy that I'm going to use to have a nice, hopefully a nice, relaxing, pleasant trail ride is, now there's going to be some issues that come up, I'm fairly certain of it, but part of the strategy that I'm going to use is having a home base here where this is going to become our safe place. So I'm going to warm him up stronger here, meaning I'm going to do some walking, trotting, and cantering and get him just connected with me here so that when we go out on the trail, if I need to retreat and come back here and put him back to work, I can. So I want him to get relief out on the trail, and I want him to, so I want to warm up strong to ride soft, so to speak. So I'm going to try to release him to a trail ride. So these little relax rein circles, I do them frequently, but I don't do them for a long time. I do it until he'll keep slacking this rein that he is right there and just staying soft, and it's familiar to him, he knows it. And that's just a recovery strategy to bring his life down. You guys have probably heard me talk about that in other videos. If he does something more dramatic where he were to spook or bolt or buck or even winning out to the other horses, then I would probably do something a little bit bigger, which would be a hindquarter yield versus just that little circle. So that little circle is like, I noticed you're not with me, and it's just I'm gonna check back in and just see if you can kind of get soft there with me. This horse has probably 50 to 60 rides, somewhere in there. So to me, he's going really good for the amount of rides he has. But he's not a seasoned advanced horse by any stretch. So maybe not quite ready for canter. I kind of set him up there to think about cantering, and he's got a little hoppy. And that's kind of his MO. When he is a little bit, there's a little bit of tension there, he tends to hop through transitions a bit. When he's relaxed, then they stay flat and soft. So still a little bit elevated there into the canter, but we'll just go ahead and cruise around. Cantering is a really beneficial thing to have working for you because cantering can be a pretty emotional gait for a horse. So if I can lope him around here pretty softly, then that gives me a much higher chance of having a nice soft trail ride compared to if I had only trotted or walked around to warm him up. And so those of you that get comfortable enough to get your horse cantering around nice, that just makes a big difference for how well your horse is going to ride the rest of the time. And then for him, I like to usually change directions each time. I'll just lope a little bit. I'm not trying to tire him out. I'm just trying to check out that he's connected with me. So I don't know if you guys can hear that, but he's blowing out a lot. He's trying to get comfortable. And by cantering, a horse has to breathe a little bit deeper than they would if they're not, walking, if they're only walking or trotting. And so it works really well to help a horse kind of relax. So I wouldn't want to skip cantering him around today before I go out for a ride. And that was really nice. I just kind of relaxed my energy in the saddle. And he kind of came back with me nicely here. Now we got some other riders approaching us, so he's wanting to get a little bit distracted and look at them. So all that means for me is I'm just going to stay on offense and try to keep his mind with me. Defense would be I just stop and stand there and wait for him to do something else. But I'd rather just keep redirecting him and keep his attention on me. Good day for a ride, huh? No, you're great. We're making a video on trying to do a trail ride alone, which can be more difficult than doing it as a group. So we're going to test Lambo out today with that. But if I need backup, I'll call you. So that was a little bit extra, so we'll just bend him down to recover. He got himself worked up there a little bit. We'll go ahead and try that again. And you'll see I'm not really trying to ride him with contact. I'm wanting to get his attention and focus on me. And so contact is great for a lot of things, but for me, building connection on a loose rein is going to be where it's at today. All right, so I'm about ready to go out, but before I do, I just want to run through quickly with you guys my strategy. So worst case scenario is I'm going to sit and bend him down and push on the horn and just try to get stopped or under control. If I can achieve that, the next thing, and I'm going to stay on him and not get off, the next thing I might do is yield his hindquarters. Now, if I think it becomes, hazardous for my health to stay on him, there's nothing wrong with getting back on the ground. So if you're watching this at home, just keep in mind it's hard to get bucked off the ground. Okay, so if you feel like your horse is getting to be too much for you, as soon as you're thinking that, it's probably a good time to step off. You can do some groundwork. You can always get back on. But if you stay on and then things escalate and get worse and your horse ends up bucking you off or running off on you, that's obviously going to be very dangerous. And so I'd rather you recover before you need to do that. So we can do a one rein stop if we had to. We could pick up an indirect rein and yield the hindquarters if we had to. We could, if I felt like he was just getting a little bit up, just a little bit more kind of hyper alert, I could just bend him down and do a relaxed rein. If we're walking along, but let's say he's wanting to trot or is just maybe walking a little bit more than I'd like to ride, like you can kind of see how slow this horse kind of normally walks in here. But another strategy that I could use is I could just tip his nose and bend him and walk him on kind of a makeshift shoulders in. And what this does is it puts a partial disengagement in his hindquarters and his ribs. So I can still be traveling to where I want to go, but by doing it with a bend, it should cause him to think a little bit more than if he's just walking along on a loose rein. So those are a couple strategies. Another thing I could do, and all these strategies end up being about him yielding his hindquarters and bending his rib cage. That's the bottom line behind all of these. But another strategy that I could use is I could walk him and just leg yield him over to one side of the trail or the other. And there's a reason I picked this location. Two reasons, well, three. It's close by. But another reason is I can come back to this arena if I need to. So I'm not just at a trailhead where there's nowhere to really ride and warm up and be safe if I need to. So this works really well for that. The other thing is these trails are fairly wide. You can almost drive a car down them. And so that gives me a little bit of space that if I need to recover and bend him around, I'll have a little room to work. So I'm not picking the most difficult trail to go on. I'm picking I'm making it more about him being by himself and just getting some exposure riding out after being hauled to a new place. So I think with that being said, we're ready to get after it. So there's a little water crossing up here, and I'm not sure what he's going to think of water. So I'm not sure if I should do that at the beginning of the ride or the end of the ride, but I'm feeling spicy, so we're going to go ahead and see if we can walk through it here at the very beginning. So it's a little dry right now, but we still got a little bit of mud to work with here. Now there's a couple of points about water crossings on the trail that I want to make. You can see he's at like a threshold right here where he's like, I don't think I can try any harder than that. So before I ask him to go forward, you could end up teaching your horse that the cue for going forward means backing up if you just put pressure on him in that moment. So I'm going to retreat and then I'm going to ask him to ride forward. That's one strategy that I like to use. Another strategy, if I have a little room to work, is I'll just kind of go back and forth sideways and just keep turning the horse towards the water. And then whenever he makes an effort to think forward and he's trying, then I'll back off. But now that he gave me a try and we're here, before I ask for another try, I'm going to retreat. So that guarantees me that I have at least 2 steps forward when I ask him to go forward. But if he's right at that threshold where he can't go any further than that, he's already tried for you, you're just going to teach your horse to be afraid of you, and you're going to teach him to get scared if you just keep putting pressure. That's worst case scenario. Best case scenario is you only teach him to wear your leg and not yield to go forward. So if he's right here at this line where he's like, let's see if we get to it, right there. Right there's the line where he's kind of stuck. If I retreat back, then again, like I said, I'm kind of guaranteed a couple of steps forward. And usually they'll end up going just a little bit more forward from that. So I'm just going to kind of wiggle side to side here. Just let him look at it from different positions. And anytime he puts his head down and wants to think about it, then I'll leave him alone. But whenever I feel like he's thinking about getting out of it, that's when I'll kind of redirect him back and forth here. So I'm just going to try to build his confidence that we can walk kind of side to side here. And then I'll just keep redirecting him back to the water. But I tried, if I ask him to go somewhere, I try to wait and release my legs when he thinks forward. There it is. Good boy. So same concept with trail loading or any other obstacle they're afraid of. It's about releasing when they try, and when they don't try, you just keep a little bit of pressure on, and so that they find relief thinking forward towards it. So now we'll back off or retreat, and then we'll go ahead and reapproach. So you can see he's right on that cusp of turning loose to it. So once I get to here and they're kind of in the water and they're kind of more committed, that's when I may not back up anymore. I may just ask him for another step. Let's see. He's not going to get any relief for doing that. So I'll keep the pressure on until he gives me another try. There's a try, and I'll back off. Now, also, once you get into the water here a little bit, a lot of horses, it would surprise you how many horses will think about rolling in it once you get in there. You would really be surprised at how many horses think about doing that. So that's also something I'll be aware of and make sure I'm not going to let him roll once we get in it a little bit further. So I'm not going to let him put his head down too far because I don't want him thinking about rolling. There we go. Very good. Now, the way he walked through that at the end tells me that he was in a good frame of mind to do it. If I were to have put too much pressure on him there, he would have resorted to either running off or jumping over it. And that would be an indicator that you did too much to do it. Now we're going to go ahead and go back through it again this way. Because just because you went through it once doesn't mean you can do it again. But I'd like him to be good at water crossings. And so we'll just take a minute here to play with this a little bit. So he's going to kind of skirt around it that way. No big deal. We'll just get back to this direction. And you saw that was way quicker than the last time. Nice and calm, head down. So you have to expect when you ask your horse for harder things that you're going to hit some resistance. That's part of the process. It's not just bunnies and rainbows training horses all the time. But it's through working with these spots where they really don't want to do something, but they learn to trust you and go, actually, that wasn't as bad of an idea as I thought it was. That's really what takes it to the next level, and you end up with a true blue horse, meaning they're a really proven horse that kind of anybody could ride and be safe and pack around. And so he's one of those horses that he's too young right now to be true blue, But if I keep peppering this stuff in here, eventually, probably when he's 7 or 8 years old, he's going to be one of those really solid horses that anybody can ride and get along with. So we're going to take that as a win right there and keep on keeping on with our trail ride. Now, the other thing that water crossing might have happened is because we had a little deeper level conversation there, there's a chance that now riding out is going to actually be even easier because he already worked through some adversity. Shout out to our camera person who's walking backwards on a trail ride right now. So there he kind of flinched. He's flinching, kind of going through there. I'm personally not going to worry about that because this isn't really a great situation to do a lot with. There's moments in the trail ride where you would kind of want to manage them through it and get your range shortened up and just direct them through so that you're safe. And then there's other moments where it's like, okay, you really didn't need to spook or flinch at that. Because he flinched and he didn't really move his feet or avoid going through there, you're just going to pick your battles is what I'm suggesting. So for this particular horse, he's going to have to do something a little bit bigger before I'm going to really do something about it. If I was riding a horse that's more known for being spooky and not paying attention, more than they're just a green horse, that particular horse I might expect a higher level of attention from throughout the ride. But for Lambo here, with how green he is, I'm not going to be too super picky about everything. It's like, again, you gotta pick your battles and find things that are going to be more meaningful than just random every little thing. If he's walking, and I want him looking around, so it's also like I'm not trying to teach him to be a deadhead out here. I want him paying attention where he's putting her feet. If there's a pothole or if there's a wire on the ground or something, I want him to notice things. I don't want him to just be completely zoned out as we're going. But this is good. His ears are forward. He's looking forward ahead. His feet feel like they're moving freely. I'm not having to pedal with every step. So this is feeling pretty good here. It's funny, I was actually kind of expecting more resistance kind of getting to this part, but I really think I developed a stronger connection with him through that water crossing because that was something he wasn't too sure that he could do. And also when I'm trail training, if I come across something like this, they do some eventing shows here. And if there's something like this where I can talk him into putting his nose on it and just smelling it and go, hey, no big deal, keep on keeping on. I like playing that game, touch it. Let's see how many different things we can get him to put his nose on while we're out here. But as far as actually moving away from the barn and being out here by ourselves, I'm pretty darn happy with how good he's being. And hopefully I didn't ruin the video by doing that water crossing because I really think that actually ended up helping quite a bit with what we're doing. So now that we're on the trail ride, you can see this is really kind of like releasing him to it. Now he's smelling poop right there. I'm not going to let him smell poop. Smelling poop is an instinctual response. So when you get a horse tame, what you're trying to do is teach them to not go to their natural prey animal instincts. You're teaching them to act like a partner. And vice versa, when we're trying to become a horseman, we're trying to not go to our natural predatorial instincts and make a horse do something. And it's the combination of us going their way and them coming our way where we meet in the middle and we can create a partnership with our horse. So so my job is to not try to make him do something that's not achievable, okay? So the water crossing was hard, but it was achievable. It can go way worse than that, in other words. And so I felt like it was achievable, so we kept on keeping on. Sometimes you do something and then you gotta look back and measure it and go, actually, maybe that wasn't worth it. That took way longer than I was expecting. It was way harder than I was expecting. I maybe taught him some bad things along the way. Maybe that wasn't achievable and it wasn't worth it. But you got to put yourself in different situations and try some things and take action in order to really find out where you're at with that sort of thing. Now he got a little speedy going down that hill, and it's much safer if you ride a horse. Like sometimes we go out and ride with our friends in Colorado in the mountains or on cattle ranches out there, and they need to be able to go up and down hills and stay calm. So I'd like him to be able to lower his head as we're going up this hill, so I'll bring my hands kind of wide, and then I'd like him to just walk down it. Now, this hill is not really a problem at all, right? But he did think about trotting down it, and so if this hill was more extreme, that could be unsafe if it was more vertical. And so I want him to teach him to just keep his head forward and just come down nice and powerfully by dropping his head. I'm going to lean back a little bit, coming down. I'm going to lean forward, going up. And that leads to a horse that can really handle trails and be successful. So little thing there, but I didn't need to let him trot down it. I didn't ask him to trot down it. And so we just go ahead and take a minute there to fix that and set up a good pattern. And so he can walk out faster like he's doing now. But if he changes gears and breaks into a trot, that's when I'm going to go ahead and do something about that. And so a big part of my philosophy of training horses is to let a horse commit to the mistake. You know, there's a lot of things we're going to do proactively, but sometimes we have to be reactive and they make a mistake and then we're going to fix it. If you let them get more committed to their mistake, then it's more clear to them where the relief was. If you don't let them get committed to the mistake, that's what we call it micromanaging. And again, some parts of a trail can be really sketchy where it's totally viable and totally okay to micromanage them through that thing. But for the most part, I want the horse putting their head down and looking where they're going and pay attention to their own feet. And again, that's what leads to, again, a really good trail horse, a really safe horse. But I'm super happy with how this is going. He's cruising along here, acts like he owns the place. But again, a big part of it is I think we warmed up correctly. And I think the water crossing was a big enough deal that it made this trail look real easy. Because he kind of had to make a decision there of acting like a prey animal and leaving the situation, or get on board with my idea and go ahead and give that water crossing a try. He chose to finally get on board with my idea and cross the water, and now this just seems like small potatoes to him, you know, riding out here. If we hadn't done that water crossing, I actually did expect some problems out here with him trying to go back to the other horses, or being a little more spooky or kind of interesting out here. But what's interesting is you could have a horse that has trail rode a bunch with other horses, and you try to take them out by themselves and everything falls apart. Like, in order to have a horse that is really safe and under any circumstances, they have to have a strong connection to the human being the leader. And so I built a lot of leadership points, so to speak, with him with that water crossing. And so it's making a big difference for us out on the trail. So even though this is the first time out here doing this, it's going really, really great. So we got a log to go over and some brush to break through here to avoid riding on some gravel. So let's, this is one of those spots I was talking about where I'm going to manage him a little bit because I don't want to get run off with through the trees. So he's going to have to do a little bit of brush popping here and pick his way through it. Oh, and did it like a champ. Didn't jump it, just walked through it. Very good. So we're kind of getting back to the farm here, and he's kind of noticing this electrical box here and was kind of spooking at it a little bit. So I'm going to let him go past it, and then I'm going to redirect him back, and we're going to see if we can get him to put his nose on it. So I'm not taking him to it, I'm trying to ride by it. He tried to leave there a bit, so I let him. I'll redirect him back and let go of the rein when they're facing the scary thing. Okay, redirect him back. I'll let go of the scary thing. And touchdown. We got him to put his nose on it. And so I didn't make a big deal about it. I let him go past it. The more you try to hold them in there when they're getting scared of something, the more claustrophobic they'd be. And if you put your leg on there and held them there and then they end up pushing through it, you actually just taught them to push through pressure. So by me just giving him a loose rein and letting him veer off as far as he wanted to, then redirecting him back to it, that really makes it pretty easy to get a horse comfortable with an obstacle. And if you use that strategy frequently, anytime they're shying at something in the arena or on a trail, it becomes a familiar pattern. So he kind of knew what I was up to as soon as I redirected him back. Now you hear him blowing out and getting relief. And so we're ending up finishing our trail ride here really nice. So thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this trail training video. We'll see you on the next one.